Hello, welcome to KaiCreative. My name is Kai, and in today's video, we're going to be having a look at some side-by-side comparisons of the photos and videos that you get out of the classic Canon 5D Mark IV versus the Apple iPhone 14 Pro. So the Canon 5D Mark IV went on sale in September of 2016. It's a full frame DSLR camera with a 30.4 megapixel sensor. And in this video, I'll be using a variety of lenses to test it out. The 24 to 105mm lens, the 70 to 200mm, and the 16 to 35mm lens to compare it against the focal lengths of the iPhone 14 Pro. The iPhone 14 Pro has three cameras on the back. The main 48 megapixel quad pixel camera has a 24mm and a 48mm focal length. The telephoto camera is 12 megapixels with a 77mm focal length, and the ultra wide camera is 12 megapixels with a 13mm focal length. And we can't carry on without the fact of mentioning that the front facing selfie camera, which has a 12 megapixel sensor, is also rated as one of the best selfie cameras that you can get on any smartphone today, as noted on the DxOMark.com. True at the time of recording this video. So a sunny winter's day gave us a great opportunity to shoot outside. So let's have a look at some of the photos taken side by side from these two legendary beasts. So let's zoom in now on some of these photos. So let's look at the iPhone 14 Pro first. Now, while the iPhone 14 Pro doesn't do a bad job of this photo, you can see that the image looks very digital. Another area where it struggles is just the edging. The edgings look very rough. If we zoom into the eyes here, we can see it's quite soft. Everything looks quite digital. I know that these pictures are mainly supposed to be used on things like social media, perhaps where we're not spending too much time looking at the details, but it is nice to have some close-up comparisons. Now, if we go to the 5D Mark IV setup with the 70 to 200, now this is a fantastic looking setup. Straight away, we can see that the eyes, they look sharp, they look like they're full of life. Look at the background, the way that it just melts away with the gradients, the different colors, the way that it captures the lines with the foreground and the background. And of course you expect that from something like a 5D Mark IV full frame DSLR camera with a 70 to 200mm f-stop 2.8 lens. We're talking about a very expensive setup, and it definitely shows in the quality of these two photos. Again, we have something similar here with our iPhone 14 Pro. If you don't zoom in too much, I think you've got quite a nice photo here, particularly if we crop it, that you could put onto Instagram. Again, if we look at the 5D Mark IV counterpart, there is no competition. It blows the iPhone 14 Pro out of the water. There is no comparison when you look at these photos side by side. So yes, the iPhone 14 Pro looks very digital versus the professional setup. I'd be very interested to see what Apple releases in their next update. Let's talk about video now, and the iPhone 14 Pro is bursting with the latest features. It has 4K video up to 60 frames per second. It comes with action video, which is a super smooth stabilization, and it has the awesome cinematic video function. Yes, it does. The Canon 5D Mark IV has the very much coveted full frame sensor and creates great video, particularly in 1080 mode up to 60 frames per second, as well as a 4K video mode, but that does have a 1.7 times crop when it's used, which can be frustrating in tight spots. Actually, to get around this, I used to shoot with a 16 to 35mm lens in 4K, particularly in the studio. As it's a little older now, it doesn't come with any in-body stabilization, and the last time I properly used it for video was in Japan in 2019, mounted on a Ronin S, and that was a heavy setup. Compare that to using the iPhone 14 Pro with its stabilized cinematic mode, and I know which one I'd prefer to use for travel videos today. The Canon 5D Mark IV can also have C-Log installed if you take it to a Canon dealer and you pay a little extra cash. It's something that I had upgraded on my 5D Mark IV, and to be honest, nowadays, if you compare it to the latest version of C-Log, particularly on the newer R series of cameras, it's not great. You will not be impressed with the 8-bit C-Log video files from the 5D Mark IV, unfortunately. On the other hand, On the other hand, the Apple iPhone 14 Pro has Pro RAW and Pro Res modes that you can turn on, which allow you to retain more information in the dynamic range of your photos and videos, but it comes at the cost of more storage. 1 minute of 10-bit HDR ProRes 4K video requires approximately 6 gigabytes of storage, meaning that you get about 20 minutes of video if shooting on the 128 gigabyte version of the iPhone 14 Pro, whereas the Canon 5D Mark IV has dual card slots, so you can swap out your memory cards whenever you need to. Now, when it comes to ease of use and convenience, the 5D Mark IV is a heavy old piece of kit. The body alone weighs 890 plus grams. Add on a 70 to 200 millimeter L lens, and you've got a beautiful back-breaking combination that will turn around some amazing images, but at the cost of your lower vertebrae. Saying that, it is definitely a robust piece of equipment. I've traveled around the world with my 5D Mark IV, throwing it in planes, trains, and the back of cabs. It takes a beating and continues to produce amazing images. I'm just gonna put that down now. The iPhone 14 Pro fits easily into your pocket. It's always with you. Granted, you don't always have the same quality of the telephoto and ultra wide lenses that you get with the main camera lens on the iPhone 14 Pro, but compare this to carrying around your 5D Mark IV with all those lenses to get those similar focal lengths. You can see the difference. This brings us on to another factor to consider, and that is the cost. The 128 gigabyte version of the iPhone 14 Pro is currently £1,099 or $999. The Pro Max is £1,199 or $1,099, and this goes up depending on the storage. For the Canon 5D Mark IV, you can still buy it new from the official Canon store for £2,609.99 in the UK. If you want C-Log, add on an extra £90 onto that, and in the United States for $2,499, and if you want the C-Log, add on an extra $100. Also, if we were to factor in all the lenses that we use today, we'd be looking at an extra $2,000/pounds on the top of the cost of the body. So which one of these should you get and why? Well, that's a little bit of a trick question because this video was only ever made to compare the photos and videos between these two. It wasn't really ever supposed to answer the question of which one you should get, as if you were limited to just one choice. It's kind of like comparing apples to oranges when you think about the reasons or purposes that you would have for purchasing one or both of these pieces of kit. The 5D Mark IV, for example, takes beautiful pictures. It was designed and marketed towards professionals who take photos for a living, documentary filmmakers, and passionate hobbyists. The iPhone 14 Pro, on the other hand, is a mobile device made for a plethora of different reasons apart from filmmaking and photography. However, it is excellent for both of those. It's super convenient, it's always with you, and the camera quality is amazing. You can edit on the go with things like CapCut, and with the new video action mode, you don't need extra kit like gimbals. It's just easy to use, cutting out all the extra steps to streamline your creation process. Also, you can download apps like Filmic Pro and go full manual if you want. And with companies like Freewell making accessories, you can now turn your iPhone 14 into a mini cinematic beast. I guess a bigger question here would be, are phones going to replace cameras? And I've mentioned this a couple of times now. I think we're a fair way off from that actually happening completely. But with the advances in technology over the last few years, the convenience of just having your phone with you, the camera sensors, lenses, and picture quality getting better and better, I think it's both a scary and exciting time to be a photographer, filmmaker, and content creator, because the tools that are available now are available to everyone, not just limited to an elite who have the money and know-how, but those who are only limited by their imagination. This is getting too deep for a YouTube video. There's definitely a revolution happening. Similar to when we moved from film to digital, some people opposed that, others embraced it. Of course, you will always have your die-hard camera fans and hobbyists like me, but maybe we're moving into a world where consumers will probably be using their mobile devices more and more, and semi-professional cameras less and less for content creation, and maybe only professionals will be investing in and using camera equipment as we know it today for corporate gigs, sports, weddings. I'm not entirely sure. I guess time will tell. So those are my thoughts on the iPhone 14 Pro versus the Canon 5D Mark IV full frame DSLR camera. What are your thoughts on using mobile devices for content creation, photography, video creation versus using traditional cameras like the 5D Mark IV? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And now that you've watched this video, check out my other 5 pros and cons of using the 5D Mark IV. Or watch this video over here that YouTube thinks that you should watch. Make sure you like today's video if you like it, and if you haven't done so already, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that little bell for notifications. So that's it from me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. All that I've got left to say is stay creative, stay safe, imagine, implement, and inspire, and I will catch you next time on KaiCreative.